We are live. Welcome to my video. This is going to be my review of the 2018 video game Rusty Lake Paradise. This video will have absolutely no spoilers for this game as well as for the first two. And in general, it will be spoiling absolutely nothing. Now, the game, let's see, I'm not sure exactly what the age rating is, but it definitely is for like adults, so yeah, so will this video be. Now, the first two games imply something. This one more comes out and says it. And we are back to the first one with this, you know, you're playing a character, you know, one specific character throughout, unlike the second where it changed over the course of it. And the settings sort of also more resemble the first one. Right, to be clear, I'm not saying this is like regression or something. But the first one, it's several hotel rooms, and the second one, it is various, homes and also other settings over the course of generations. In this one, it's not quite as, claustrophobic as the first one got, nor as expansive as the second one got. It is very focused. This is also not a criticism of the first two. Similar to the first, it is set over several days in a row rather than generations like the second one. And they do something that they didn't really do in the first two that I think works really well. Over the course of it, the setting, the island of paradise, gradually opens up more. Like, you have access to a number of areas from right away, and then, slowly over the course of the levels, you're able to go more places, which of course also makes it, more challenging, because, if you really wanted to, you could probably brute force the very start of this and chunks of the first two games as well. By the end, you absolutely cannot. This has the most complex puzzles of these three. It would genuinely take you an absolute eternity. There's so many different permutations and different things you have to interact with that affect each other, and just, like, it's on the level of some of the later, some of frictional games. Like I was particularly reminded of one of the last puzzles of Penumbra Black Plague, which, absolutely love those games, so that's high praise coming from me. Now, I think that might more or less cover that aspect. I do also think this is one of the ones, they're gradually getting increasingly, like, easy to relate to. Like, in the first one, you're immediately presented with a couple of things that are fairly unusual, and I don't think that's a weakness, but I do think it is purposeful that they're gradually, so the first one, okay, your job is to help hotel guests. That's, a lot of people haven't had that job, never will, but you can imagine it. But then there's the aspect that everyone you interact with is an anthropomorphized animal, and there's just some really weird things from very early on in the first one. You know, all three of these games are weird, but then, you know, the second one is essentially this like chronicling of generations of the same family, and we see all these horrible things that happen to them, you know, and it's the kind of thing where you find yourself thinking, wow, you know, didn't realize how lucky me and my family have been that all these kinds of things didn't happen to us. And for some of them it is like, wow, yeah, that's exactly like something that happened to us. And then with this one, like, it starts with the player character's mother having died, and you're going back home to talk to, you know, your father, grandmother, the servants who work there, and yeah, like, it, at the very start, it does feel like just, you know, a fairly straightforward story of grief, and you know, you're trying to figure out what actually happened here, you know, and yeah, over time you'll realize exactly what happened, and it has very much this vibe of like a Grecian tragedy. Like, I did determine the ending before I got there, and you know, to an extent, you know, one could say something somewhat similar about the first game. Arguably the second, you know, and they're not really trying to prevent you from figuring out some of these major things. They're just making sure that there's enough build-up that it still really hits like a gut punch when it is, you know, yeah. I think that might more or less cover. Yeah, I thought it worked really well. This sort of illusion of freedom that you know, yeah, go anywhere on the island. You know, there's over the course of it. You know, I think early in the game it's probably about as many individual screens as early in the first game. Maybe also, well, let's see. See, the second one, some of the early levels really did not have a huge number of individual screens. That came later. But yeah, you know, because it is more open than the first two, there's a sense that you know, it's really up to you, but you pretty quickly do realize that really isn't quite the case, and I thought they did that very nicely, because, like, essentially, if they really badly wanted to, they could have structured this as just a few adjoining rooms, or just, you know, yeah, really the first one, a lot of the time you're in one room and it's just big enough that there's room for multiple screens of interaction. Where the second one added the dragging, this one doesn't really introduce a new mechanic, but some of the stuff they have you doing is, you know, different from the first two in a very compelling way. And this was also where it really dawned on me that there is the fact that the first one had anthropomorphized animals, and both of these, you know, you're interacting with human beings, and you know, in this one throughout you're a human being. In the second one, you know, at times you seem to be this sort of omniscient kind of, you know, but, or at least, yes, separate from, you know, not necessarily human. But yeah, it is not just like random that they, you know, they didn't change their minds after making that first one, think, nah, we should be focusing on humans. There is a distinct reason for that. And I think other than that, it is more or less the, yeah, other than that, you know, it takes what the first two do, and, you know, it's never a step back. Sometimes not a lot has changed, but I don't think it really needed to. And yeah, you do find, you get more of what's going on in the entire Rusty Lake universe from playing this one. And yeah, the fact that, this is the first of these to do this sort of setup where you're visiting the same areas over the course of multiple days. The first one, it's multiple days, but each day you're in a different room. You're in a different hotel room. And the second one, there was some where it was some of the same places, but to a lesser extent than here. And the fact that it is the same places over multiple days means that different things are the case on different days. And sometimes something will happen on one day that will very much affect another day. And I thought they did a really, really great job with that. I don't think I want to give any examples, though, because it's stuff that you really shouldn't know before you see it. Let's see. I think that does cover... yeah, so you're also... You continue to interact with some of the same characters, as, mentioned... Yeah, I mentioned some of them earlier, and that also has a good effect. Yeah. Let's see, and this one, more so than the first two, has, like, there is stuff that is being hidden, and, I get it, obviously, hidden object game, but, yeah, to a greater extent than the first two. And that also, really drives you to keep going, because you want to see what is the next thing that is currently not visible to me. I think that might cover... right, I did want to say an argument could be made as to the fairness of the complex puzzles. And essentially, it is this thing of... One of the major arguments for it being fair is that it's not really random. I think there are some randomized elements to puzzles, but once you figure out the solution to a puzzle, you just carry that out. It's not going to... The nature of the solution is not going to change. And let's see, you have the what was the other thing? The fact that the game doesn't have a fail state really helps. Essentially, if you do accidentally mess something up for a puzzle, you're fine. It's not going to, like, you may have to manually reset that puzzle, which tends to be fairly easy to figure out how to do, and then you can try again. It's not one of those where, yeah. And the yeah, if you're trying to figure out the solution, you can just experiment. It's not going to, like, there are some adventure games where if you use a certain item too early, you just screw yourself completely. You won't be able to complete the game. And that's not the case here. The only time you can use an item as like the last time you use that item is when it would be the correct solution. They clearly took great care to ensure that. Let's see, you have the what's the other thing? So for the fairness, the there are there are hints to the actual solution, and essentially once you're on the same page, you can figure out, essentially the problem, and that segues nicely into why some might find it unfair. You do have to think somewhat outside the box for some of it. There is a logic to it, and it's not moon logic, but it is not necessarily something, it's not the first thing you might think of, and that also helps with the themes of the game, of what's actually going on, because this is not really supposed to be about people who do something that we ourselves would like to be doing in the real world, or want anyone else to do, for that matter. That's part of what they're doing with these games, is exploring something. That's as much detail as I can go into without spoiling it, so I will not go further. But yeah, that is pretty much it. And keep in mind, it auto-saves when you do accomplish something. You don't have to complete a level in one sitting. And let's see, I think that might cover. Right, one thing that this one does have, some puzzles where there's one particular puzzle where a character is like moving around the screen, and once you figure out what you're supposed to do, you might not get it 100% right away, but you won't have to wait very long before her movement, because her movement loops 100%. That might be a pun. Maybe you'll be able to determine what I'm talking about if you play the game. But I think I've said what I wanted to about that. I think that might... Right, this one does also have, there are some items that you use in multiple places, multiple ways. And I think that covers everything that I didn't say in my videos on the first two. So continues to be really, really solid. I'm really glad there's, let's see, I think 6 left for me to play or something like that. Of the, I got every single one of them. This one does still have that sometimes you'll be trying to interact with one thing and it'll interact with something else that's very close by, and maybe it's fixed in one of the future ones. I think that does cover. Let's see. I will say it was less of a problem here. So, that is something where they are getting better as well. Yes, that is everything I can say without spoiling anything. So, hope this helped you determine whether or not to play the game. And yeah, I'm gonna do another video game review sometime next week, so hope to catch you then, or even before that, now that I do a video every day.